Before I plan any trip, I ask 5 questions. This is not only something that I do for myself, but it's also what I do for clients. When I work with someone, there's 5 things that I want to know right off the bat, or at least get the client thinking about before we go any deeper into planning a trip. Part of it's expectation setting, but it's also getting a better feel for what this person is looking for in their trip. So, the first thing I ask people when I'm planning a trip, and again, I ask these of myself too, is what do you need this trip to do for you? Is this a trip where you just need to go and unplug, or maybe you want to check off a bucket list item of yours. Maybe you want to finally have that family trip. Maybe you want to meet up with some friends. Maybe you want to chase family history. It doesn't necessarily have to be a tangible item for what you need this trip to do for you, but I think it's important to sit down and decide what is it that you need the trip to do for you? What are you looking to get out of this trip? As you probably have guessed, trips take a lot of time for not only the planning, but they also take a lot of time usually to get to the destination. It's a lot of money, or it can be a lot of money for people. Is taking time off of work. Trips are a commitment, and it is important to go into every trip knowing what you need the trip to do for you, or what your expectations are around that trip. It's just helpful. It helps feel more successful when help you to feel more successful when you're done with your trip. So another thing that I like to ask people is also, how do you like to spend your day? I'm not talking about your day when you go to your 9 to 5, you come home and you kick your shoes off and you have I don't know, whatever helps you relax, whether that's a drink or maybe something sweet, or maybe you go for a run or a hike. I don't know. That's not what I'm asking for. When I ask you how you like to spend your day, I'm thinking more of how do you function on your days when you're not working? Are you someone who likes to be consistently busy even on your days off, and you have a schedule and an itinerary and you follow it and you check the things off your list, and at the end of the day that's how you feel accomplished? Or are you someone who enjoys a little more spontaneity, or maybe just wants to go with the flow and see where things lead? Maybe you have a couple ideas of things that you like. They can be things like hobbies. Maybe you do like to go hike. Maybe you like to dance. Maybe you like to read or go enjoy the arts, whether that's at a museum or if you like to see a show. So, understanding how you like to spend your day helps define what your trip is going to look like, what the itinerary of the trip is going to look like. Is that a jam-packed itinerary, or is that something that allows some wiggle room for wandering and exploring and feeling a little more, shall we say, disconnected and relaxed? It's all very important. It all works into the structure. It helps define how often maybe you move between one city to another if you do have a longer trip, or how many days you spend in a city. If you can pack it all in 1 or 2 days and you're happy with that, then that's doable. If you're someone who would rather spend a couple extra days so you don't feel rushed, that's also something that's doable. So it's a very important question to ask how you like to spend your days, and to just kind of just jot down how you like to spend them, and then we can go from there. So another thing that I like to ask people is, what does comfort look like for you? Everybody has different comfort levels with everything, and that's not only just your accommodations, that also has to do with your comfort level for eating out, or how you travel, whether that's by air or train or car. Knowing what you're comfortable with is helpful, because then you kind of get to level set of what the trip is going to look like, what needs to get booked, and where. Comfort also is another thing to take into account from a little different lens. I know for me, I'm totally fine with whether I stay in a hostel or stay in a five-star resort. As long as I have my indoor plumbing, I'm happy. Not saying I don't like camping, but I do like indoor plumbing. That being said, I know my comfort level looks different depending on the destination that I'm in. If I'm in a country that I've never been to or don't speak the language and I feel very much out of my normal depth at home, I'm gonna choose different comfort than I would if I was traveling to an English speaking country that I've been to before. For example, I hadn't been back to Asia in 18 years. And yes, I was a little uncertain and a little nervous because I didn't know what to expect. I arrived by myself and my comfort looked different. I stayed in a hotel. I had a car there waiting to pick me up. And I'm so, so grateful that I did all of that. I was taken care of. I was comfortable. I didn't have to worry. I also was not functioning clearly because it was a very long flight. I was tired and it was so wonderful to just have people take care of me. It's very rare that I travel that way. But in that situation, my definition of comfort was a whole lot different than if I'm, say, flying to London. I've been to London, I don't know how many times, I've actually lost count, and I can navigate that city in my sleep. I speak English, people there speak English. I know I'm going to have cell service. I know what services are available. So my level of comfort there is completely different than showing up in Asia for this example. So I think that's also something very important to look at and to get a better understanding of the trip. Another thing that I've touched on a little bit earlier in the video is, what is your tolerance for spontaneity? I speak from personal experience that my tolerance for spontaneity over the years has completely shifted. I used to very much dislike the unknown. When I was younger, I had everything planned out. I had all the logistics done. I still do because I'm a logistics person. But that being said, if something went wrong or if something was not planned, I didn't like it. It made me uncomfortable. It's not that I couldn't go with the flow, but it wasn't what I wanted from the trip. Going back to that first question, what do you need from this trip? So spontaneity at the time was not something for me. Now I'm much more likely to show up somewhere and just not have a plan. Have maybe an idea of some things that I want to do and hit, and maybe I've made a few reservations because I know that they're popular locations. Like when I was in Rome, for example, I booked the Colosseum early because I knew that was going to be busy. Otherwise, I didn't have a ton of plans. I'm actually grateful I didn't because I found out somewhat later into the planning. I think I might have even already arrived that the first Sundays are free to go into a lot of these historic sites. So I shifted my days around, or what I had kind of planned for my days around, and ended up going to some sites that had free entry for that day. So think about your tolerance for spontaneity. Um, I I know everybody's different. I know people who they have to have an hour by hour itinerary when they travel. Makes me giggle. I'm not that way. But I also know people who they don't want anything. They just want to wake up when they wake up and go to bed when they go to bed and eat when they need to eat. And if they see a museum they like, they're going to go to the museum, or they can be walking down the street and see a billboard and say, oh, yeah, I'm going to go to that show tonight. Some people are that way. I've traveled that way before as well. And I think it's actually super fun to do. But all that to be said, you need to plan a trip that works for you. And, you know, see, the previous question was comfort look like for you? If you're uncomfortable with spontaneity, then the trip needs to be planned around reducing the spontaneity or the potential for spontaneity. So that's something that I work with people and I very much enjoy it. And the last question that I ask people, so question number 5, is what would make this trip look successful to you? And I'm not just talking about activities. I know those play a factor, that sometimes people go somewhere because there is something that they want to do or they want to see. And once that's done, the rest of it doesn't matter. I've traveled that way myself too. And it's not to say that I didn't enjoy the trips on the whole, but sometimes there are things that is the one thing that you want to happen. And as long as that happens, the rest of it doesn't matter. I like to dig deeper though, because there's always intangible things when it comes to travel that are important to you. And I have a couple examples I could give. So we'll give three. I think three of the intangible things that help make a trip successful are the ability to unplug, being able to feel more like a local than a tourist. I kind of prefer to say a visitor, but same difference, I guess. And also feeling joy. There's so many pressures we have when we're at home, from our devices and our work. So there's the unplugging. Um, there's a lot of unrest in the world, and I think that really sucks at our joy. You can kind of put some distance between yourself and the world's unrest and how much you consume of that when you're overseas. So there's your joy, and getting to feel like a local in places, getting that more personal experience versus being like, say, on and off a big tour bus all the time or in a big tour group. Those feelings are also things that are very intangible. So, what does a trip that look like, to be successful for you? What does success look like for you? It's a silly thing to apply to a trip, or at least it sounds silly on the surface, but I promise it's a feeling it's invaluable as long as you take the time to really think about it in advance. So, those are the 5 things, I'll go through them real quick. What do you need this trip to do for you? How do you like to spend your day? What does comfort look like for you? What is your tolerance for spontaneity? And then also thinking about what would make this trip look successful for you. They're the 5 questions. You can read more about it on the blog, or you can jump on my calendar and we can talk about it. I love talking travel. You've probably noticed if you've been around here for a little bit. And I will catch you on the next one. Bye.